I hope you get the weird stuff. So it's about not programming inside a programming conference, but I was told we should show off that there is real stuff out there done with Smalltalk, and the backend and the system is completely done in Smalltalk of ApptiveGrid, 100%, meaning including the database. There will be a talk tomorrow. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me. I'm to Argentina, and I'm really that you invited me being here. Something about myself. So we had this in here. It was 95. Yeah. 2003 I started into actually doing projects. This was more of art installations and music analysis and visual generation in music labs. And then 2005 I happened to make my first startup doing in Squeak Smalltalk. We didn't succeed, but at least it was the start of my professional career, because after that I did something else than doing Smalltalk. I mean, it did for there, you don't go back. Yeah. Smalltalks conference-wise, 2010 was the first in Barcelona, and 9 years later, I did the one in Cologne. I was the organizer for that Cologne, and now it's Smalltalks the first time. So while being a Smalltalk developer, I'm officially a member of the Faro board, but I also did a lot of libraries and frameworks that are actually being used by other people because they complain sometimes. So I know they use it. Yeah, I just do a lot of stuff with Smalltalk, and I really like it. So what I try to do today is just introduce to the product a bit why we do this. Then I actually, if the internet connection permits, I try to do live, use the software a bit to make a simple use case so it's better than what we're doing. I will show a bit what is the match, because I think that Smalltalk or object-oriented systems are a quite good match for the hypermedia, how we call it, or the internet, you call it, the World Wide Web. So yeah, let's start. So for us, it's because all topics here usually pretty much technical. So, but there is a world that is non-technical, and that's usually your customers. So if you do an end user / end company product that do not think technical these days, especially in Germany, it's expensive, and there's a gap to close here. So what we all are here, we are interested in technology, Smalltalk, and most of the presentations are looking into the future. What would be the next good thing to do? When we look at the business for our customers, they're way behind, and nobody's closing the gap usually. So you can close the gap with a lot of money, because you get some software company doing a project and all this stuff, but you need to make them and able to get something more modern. Yeah. So the relationship usually is it's more or less complicated, because just last week I did a presentation in Germany where the numbers are that 70% of all software projects fail. We have the all-time high in the lack of software programmers or developers in general. So, and then Germany is a pretty conservative company, so they try to catch up with digitalization. But how? Because these are the prerequisites are not optimal, to say at least. Yeah. But as I said, the problems are usually that expensive, no offense meant, but usually solving a problem, communicating, spending a lot in software, it turns out to be really expensive. So it's not for everyone. our product mainly targets SMEs, which means small and medium enterprise. So as the ones that have enough money to make a huge software project to solve their stuff. Yeah, takes quite a time. You always, I mean, there's money and time. You can exchange it back and forth as you like it. And then, yeah, software is still, I experience software mostly to be complicated. So I like to develop it more. So easy things are super easy and hard things would at least be possible. Because with all the failing software projects, it turned out that hard things are really close to be impossible. In order to demonstrate a bit what we are about, because the platform is that we program the platform, so our customers don't have to. Not a branch software, so we not have one topic that we cover. All sorts of. Came up with something you might relate. The most that you can imagine of issue and developer. That's it. So if you would like to do this, what could you do? I mean, you hire a developer. Hopefully this is better. I hope we'll see. Yeah. So and then you start developing a software. You make this model, which is really not too complex, so we can understand within seconds. But then you have to build up a service. There's something like in the internet, and there is URLs, and then you have to parse them and model execution. Then you don't want to lose your data. You need a database. Then you need to pick response. So there's even more to do. And when you finish doing that, you still have to get a machine, get it up running, configured. So the simple thing in software, usually, if you want to do a product, is pretty complicated to me. Okay. I hope the internet, the connection, the servers are hosted in Germany. So I think Argentina, Germany is not the least latency connection you could have, but we give it a try. All right. So this is if you log in your ApptiveGrid, so it's called a low-code platform. So, but we just discover beside the buzzwords what it's to it. So these would usually be namespaces or projects. So you can have multiple projects, and we just create a new one, which is Smalltalks. Oh no, issue tracker. And then you go into something which database people would say that's a table. We call it a grid, where you're just saying, okay, there is the first thing I try to sketch my model. So when it almost looks like an Excel, because that's the most accepted and the most used user interface of all time. So, and then you start just to model. We said we need to have title, and then we need another column, which is called description. And while you're doing this, you're just configuring the database underneath. So that's what you do. It looks like Excel, but actually what you would do in SQL, like create table and stuff, everything is working while you're doing this. And in order to be useful as an issue tracker, you would have some state. And here you see we have a lot of types, which give functionality on their own. So types are not only bad, Hernan, so they can even provide you some functionality. And one would be a single select, where you can just say the usual. There's nothing special here. In progress and done. For programmers, it's almost like call it an enum sort of thing. And if you have these, you could enter here something like a task. And then the first thing is you're already a drop down. So making a UI. So this is already okay-ish, but that's not the user interface you want to use in the end. So in order to turn, well, you could call this a schema or an entity schema. You just create a form, which means another kind of user interface. And it's basically turning everything you had horizontally, now it's vertically. That's basically the difference between a column and a form is just You make it vertical and it looks like a form. It's super. You can just say new issue. And then you say state I don't want to have in the form, so I blend it out, and then so just saying, okay, I give this to my colleagues. You could either, if you want to, you could scan this QR code right now, so it would work instantly because the service is already, it's running, everything is up. I'm just demonstrating here, opening a new window, and when you do this, you get the form. And you say, if we have a second task and a second description. So in this link actually doesn't even need to log into the system. Yeah, so you can make it in a way that you can give this to anyone, because there's a lot on the internet is working security by obscurity. So you have a long URL which has cryptic numbers in it, so nobody's able to guess, and there's no authorization behind it. So then you send it, and if you go back to your grid, you have that in. So first thing. Then, as I talked about the types are usually rich because not in usefulness of restricting what value you could put, but they have additional functionality. And one of the single select is you can try making it to a Kanban board, and then it just takes every of the possible states into columns. And then you can just go and turn your tickets into the next column, and that's just changing the state. So this is pretty demonstrates what the usual requirements for customers to solve digital processes are really basic, which you can solve with such a thing. Yeah, but we wanted also to have the developer into, so we make a second grid, and here we make just name and email address. This is Norbert, this is me. So the one thing it's now missing from the model is we need a relationship from the issue to the developer. So we create a new here in the middle, an assignee column, and then we say we just need to link that to another grid. It's the usual stuff if we would have entities and a reference from one to one. So this is the same thing, and then you can just select it, and here you are, and then you will get the same drop down as the other one, but now it's fed from all the possibilities in the other grid. So this is already quite nice. So if we go on the Kanban board, we could even say, I don't want to have this state, wait. New fields need to be unhidden, a long discussion in the company. And then you blend it in, and then the first task, wait. Now we have this. Not sure it's updated. Ah, the first task has no assignee yet, okay. So if you don't then go back, you have the most basic way of an issue tracker. It's fully functional. So that would be the part of the whole system where you can make your model and make it help you in any way. The most used feature is these forms, because even if you don't think about it, when we are on the internet, we are filling forms all the time, because that's the most generic and basic data acquisition thing we have. But that alone would be just nice, but not really helpful, because you want the system to do anything. And for the purpose of demonstrating, I'm just saying, when you assign someone to a task, you should get an email, anything of these. And there's the second module in the system is the workflow system. And here you just add the behavioral side of the data. So now we had schemas, entities, data modeling, so it's more or less static. The form can enter the data, but now we want to have something dynamic. And as I said, when we assign someone, we want to do this. So there is a thing that one entry that was already there is changed. Then we want to do something. So we choose the issues, and then the field assignee. So for now, we just leave it any value. You can even restrict from that value to that value, or from to any, or any of these sort. But this is working. And then you just go and press the button below. You test the flow, and after that, clicking here, you get a presentation of the data that's flowing now. So what would have happened if someone would just assign this new user, and then you have the new structure. So what I said, I want to send an email, which then just saying the one thing happens after that. There is an email. That's the from name. And when it comes to recipients, you have these curly braces where you open the data that would flow through the system. And then there is no assignee. Wait. It always takes, if you don't do it, it takes the latest entry. Okay, cool. But there is also assign me. Thank you for submitting a new issue. So if you do it once again, and then you go in there, say recipients. So in the output now, we have the assignee, and the assignee has the embedded stuff I explained sooner. Then I just need to click on the email address, and so every time in the whole structure, at that position, whenever something is flowing, it will take that value in every run. I didn't understand it acoustically. Yeah. Yeah. Here the data just flows through, so it takes the schema you have. So you mean extending the schema here? Yeah. We just didn't do it. So I could show a few other places where exactly that what you want to do, saying I'm coming to that point, I'm saying no, I'm not going back, create, and then come back, select. No, we have this, for instance, if you expand something, and then you have here create field. So something when you're looking at it saying, okay, there's something missing, I'm creating something, or the assignee is also, you can always create. So that's part of the front end. So we try to catch up with exactly these things, because these are annoying, like saying there's something I need to go back all the way, construct, and that's boring. And we try to be not that, but we are still a small team, so we try our best, but that's not possible right now. Okay, back to the example. Will work. Just to see, and then you have the email content. Hi, new task for you. And then you just do the same thing. You press here for information. And then it's the title, and then maybe a new line, and then the description. Okay, that should be sufficient. So in this time, it's already the case when I need to have another developer. Me. Because I need to change the value. So now, I mean, it's a demonstration, so it's not supposed to work, but if we now select me, then at that point, that's exactly what the system happens. So the system should ignite the workflow. Oh, there was an error. So no subject. So maybe, yeah, sure. I just check. So I switch it back, and then we should see. That you see in the history. So it just the time should be right, and I even should have an email in my. Oh, anyway. I don't know how to get out the full screen right now. Here. Maybe it's not important just to show here. Then you have that. So that's just to demonstrate that there's a lot of business cases where you can just have the right abstraction. And the biggest benefit of the tool, I'm always telling, is that the biggest problem in IT industry I see is that the one that implements the software never talks to the one that has the problem. And that's exactly what we do here usually. And the biggest success story was a non-trivial case where we have a screen sharing session. You just got on the internet, a screen sharing session, 90 minutes, talk, click, no, back, and it was done. The whole product was done within 90 minutes, and they still use it. All right, so I hope this was a bit clearer. Yeah, and now to the principles we try to. I do HTTP or internet stuff for a long time, and one thing I always admired is usually hypertext, because HTML is called hypertext. Why it's called hyper? Because you have usually the first discover URL, you say it. You get one URL, and the response contains all the possibilities to go from where to where. So that's why HTML is so flexible, because there's no API, implicit knowledge. Everything is explicit. So every page consists of all the possibility you can go from that page to somewhere else. And that's the hyper in hypertext. But you can also do this in hyper application, which is really hard to do because the internet or the industry does not go in the right direction. So we had XML, and now we have JSON, which is incapable of having metadata and everything. So it's just a drag. So, but at least there is a few things. So, and the most important stuff to think about is in the internet that if you have what a 0x is usually a memory address, every developer saying. So if that would be usually something like a service like your MMU, the memory management unit, will point you to the right direction. And the URL is nothing different. So the only thing is the L in the URL, and that's the host, because it's a locator. It's not only tied to my local system, because a memory address is strictly local physically on the physical machine, and the URL just tends that to saying, okay, it's something but on that machine, which, the network is the computer. So that's one thing that can enable it, that you at least can pinpoint to all over the globe. When you have the reference, and the reference, I mean, the HTTP is resource-based. Always remember this, not behavior, it's resource-based. Then you can say, if you take the URI and the HTTP verb, then you get the operation. And that's the all APIs, always the combination of both defines the operation. And in the simple CRUD case, like here, a get on the same URI will be the read action, the put will be the write action, and the delete will be the remove action. And we make that strictly in the 5 minutes will be sufficient. We make that strictly because there's one thing that breaks I would say the asymmetry, because everyone is tied to RPC. So we have objects, we have methods we always go into these procedure calling, and there's the remote procedure calling. So everyone does this HTTP create user stuff. And that's pretty much the wrong approach, because the HTTP or the World Wide Web is a huge caching architecture, and you cannot cache behavior. You can cache state, and that's why it's about state. And there's one thing. I mean, Smalltalk maybe misses a proper reification of execution, But there's one thing you can do, and I pretty much like, it's a command pattern. The command pattern is a wrapping around a method call, which is a resource which also allows you to check preconditions. You can wrap security and everything. So that's what we do in ApptiveGrid to make because it's not obvious to make this HTTP thing work with the object stuff, but if you make this command pattern stuff, it's pretty easy and straightforward to do, and it works pretty flawlessly. When it comes to JSON, it's really, I mean, a JSON is a struct. And the types, I think it supports 5 types. I mean, come on, it's not the 90s. So we extend the format with, I mean, it's string semantics, you know. Yeah. But it's working pretty well because HTTP has multiple problems. And one thing is if you have a list of resources, you usually have a JSON array and then objects into, but then you don't know what is the identity of those objects. So the rest way would be that people tell you, yeah, you have to have a list of URLs to that object. But if you then do an application in latency-wise, it's not a pretty good idea having 500 links that you all have to load in order to figure out something. So that's the basic mismatch you always have. And the whole format, which is hyper application layer, adds 2 things. And the one thing is links, making an association between 2 resources on the net. And we make it a bit blurry. This could be a property or a behavior, because the URL and the method we just learned, it's an operation. So this is kind of, we're not fully there, what we do. And here the whole format has always a self link, and that always pinpoints back to the object. So when you put this in a list, in the grids below, here you have the array, but always there's something included. I'm actually this object. So you don't lose that. So you can identify the identity is kept. And I left in the blue one the patch. It's just like for the CRUD operation. Usually front ends do a lot of string semantic stuff with URL. You know, when there is this number, then a slash something will be the patch operation. No, we make it explicit. So the whole URI with plus the HTTP method is included in all the JSON, so that the front end never string concats URLs to get something. And we on the back end, we can change it when we want. That's all the hyper idea from the start. Now I'm getting, yeah. Just repeating, it's you can reference or associate things. The self links, with the self link, you have identity, embedding, and we even hook our security onto it, making the simple thing that there is maximum of links you can have, and if you have don't permission to it, it's not included. So the front end can just say, I know the actions. If it's there, I can use it. If it's not there, I cannot use it. So, and then the front end decides either not show, spraying out, which you would do in a business model. What we also do is your problem, because the front end is JavaScript, so it's not like C-side. C-side is really, you have it at one block, but if you have a JavaScript and a Pharo backend, then you have, you always have this JSON mismatch. And if you've seen when I tracked the email address from the visual tree, that we actually do by generating an ApptiveGrid expression. So, and here I did a parser, just a descent from the RB parser to a simple syntax which looks a bit more like JavaScript. And this whole parser and interpreter is done with Pharo.js. It's transpiled to JavaScript. So, and that's the one thing that we have the expressions we can use on the front end the same and on the back end. So that I maybe show you tomorrow. We can even use this down to the database level. That you create, I presented it last ESEC, that you create a expression on the front end that you transfer to the back end and give to the database, and that would be the selection block for getting the objects from the database. It looks like this. It's just, it doesn't look too nice, but the both above is the step function is on the flow. Each of the bubbles when being executed is a step. So when you're in a flow instance execution, it knows what a step is. It can pinpoint that, and then it knows it's a node, so it has an output. And then it depends on what the data you get, because if you have an HTTP request, you never know what you get. And then you have all the method to actually convert and select things from the net, from the database or something. And this goes down to the get state. That this is an example for if there would be a JSON that would have one state property. Because then output get data, you would get the raw JSON. And then you say, okay, in there is a state. I will get that. And then I check it if the same as done. And that's an expression that's being used in the front end, and that's transferred to the back end. And that's even used when doing database queries. Finally, also a discussion on last exec is that people were asking, I was telling about we have 0 downtime deployments, and people were asking about what do I do with the session object, and we don't have any. Because session objects are kind of a design flaw, I would say. And stateless API here just means that every information you need to resolve the request is included in the URL. So here we have this user, my user ID and the space. That's all I need in order to resolve the object. So if you make your data model proper and store all the necessary stuff in a database, there will be enough information for them to discover. And for such a backend, it's sufficient. And so there is no session object. We can shut down images and turn up as we like, because you just will move to another image, but you won't notice. So it's also a big strength in doing these services. And finally, we use an object-oriented database, which removes the most of the headaches. And that's the database we did. I will present tomorrow. Yeah, that's how we get along with the internet and object-oriented stuff doing. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Well, first of all, congratulations. The application looks great. Kind of reminds me of the double DB, the old thing. It's actually kind of the same approach, but I think it's better. I haven't used this one. I dabbled with the old one. Can you describe what's your tech stack? I know you say that you use Soil and you use Faro on the back end, but what's the rest of the stack? Let's say.
Well, the whole story, the whole backend is Faro images, so there's plenty of them. And for optimization, we make pinning. That means we have a load balancer, which is HA proxy. And the first time when request, because every request to a user includes a user ID. So we're just saying every time this ID comes in, the first time choose any of the Faros, and then remember in a table, so that all subsequent requests will go to that image, which allows me to just, when I get the objects from the database, just to build up a cache. Yeah, and then it goes pretty fast. And you can do a lot of that stuff, but always with the resilience factor that if the image goes down, nothing happens, because the load balancer will try it 3 times, saying, screw you, I take another one. So that's the resilience factor of all of that. We have also, what I did is an API caching architecture. So there is something called Varnish. Not sure if you heard ever. It's the most used web cache. And we have kind of a protocol between the Faro images and the Varnish that it has notification when data gets invalidated. You know, the Chickstra, the 2 hard things in IT, cache invalidation and naming things. And it's just that we have a big Varnish cache in front, and every API request goes through. And on the hook back, it gets information about when you change something, and then you read, it's being cached. And then when you change something, on the read side, invalidate those. And that means you have something like top-level objects like the grids, yeah? And there's a lot of things that depend to the grid. And then when you read, you cache, and when you change anything, saying, okay, but that invalidates the context of the grid, and then you tell the cache, remove all objects that are associated with a grid, which happens before you get the response. So that means on the next request, it's already gone. But what we have is, well, it's HA proxy for SSL offloading, then varnish, then HA proxy again for the pinning, and then it's faro. And the rest is file system, because Soil works on file system, which we use is NFS right now. I use other things, but it's just to have multiple machines. I'm naming maybe Soil will be a distributed database by next year or the year after, so we will even remove that. But the stack is HA proxy, varnish, faro.
And the cache invalidation in the varnish level, do you invalidate using a response header? Just saying, how do you communicate?
Response header, yeah.
Is a response header saying X invalidates some grid and then?
Two things. So there's the one thing the humans do is, while using the front end, we hook on the response header. So it looks just at the header and then removes it. But if a workflow runs, there is no response header.
Oh,
and then it actively contacts the cache and say, invalidate these.
Okay.
So we have something called the context, we use a context-oriented stuff, so a process variable, and it just knows its origin, context origin, either HTTP or REST or internal, and then it knows how to invalidate a cache.
And the front end, what do you use for it?
That's Vue.js.
Vue.js.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
And ApptiveGrid.
Yeah, of course. Vue.js.
VUE. It's written. It's
like React, but well done.
Exactly. It's from old. It's even from people that were in the React.js community, and they found it too complicated, too bloated, too everything. They did a new start. And yeah, it's all, they all hook on these W3C components. You know, there's now a way how to isolate CSS and stuff in a rectangle so that they'll get independent, and that enabled a lot of component-wise front ends doing.
I have one question, and I think it's the last one, right? Okay. The reasons for going client, JavaScript client, and Smalltalk backend instead of doing server-side rendering with CSI or something. The reason is more like because you already have someone that did the front end and was familiar with JavaScript, or the technical reasons why you think maybe the stateless aspect that you mentioned. So it was more like it was technical decisions, or it was more resource that make you go into this direction?
No, it was deliberate. I said from the beginning, no way. So for me, I mean, I used Seaside a long time. So, and I really like it for a special purpose. So that means if you have mostly company internal, really complex stuff, then you will favor Seaside, because doing that with JSON mapping, it's just overkill. But let's face it, if you really do JavaScript combined with Seaside, there is no way which is good, I think. You end up all with this JS stream, concatenating strings, and it goes out hand. And then Seaside is really session based. And I'm one of these Unix guys. I'm coming a long way. I always hated it, because you just put the session object and everything is tied to these. You have to keep up that runtime. It doesn't die and stuff. And that's not a nice way to put it. So that's my 2 points against Seaside. And so I never thought about it. And the third point of the two is that to have a rich user experience, you have a lot of these, I mean, you know, this 4-digit number of JavaScript libraries you inherit by doing this. But you want to have animations and all that stuff. And the people that do that front end, that are front end developers. And the way front end looks, we would really have a hard time, especially if you have front end needs that the back end developers have to solve. That's always the big thing you should avoid. Make them. So yeah, I don't like JavaScript. Well, I don't hate JavaScript, but I don't like it too much. And all this front end, but this way was right from the beginning. My pleasure.